Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
Hi. I'm so thankful that you came on. I know that you're really nervous, but you're a gem, and I just really felt strongly about sharing your story with people because I think it's something very brave and courageous, and it's not like it's not a common story, but I think it's like one that needs to be heard. And I just thought it was great to hear about your journey because for me, we're going to talk about you adopting three children from Ethiopia, and which I think is so amazing. Because for me, like, I don't have kids, and I know I'm getting to an age of like, am I gonna have kids? Not gonna have kids, and I'm not really quite ready. But I don't always necessarily think of the outside the box of like, oh, you can adopt kids. Okay, you can adopt kids here in the United States, or like there's other kids all around the world that need love and like a better opportunity. So I just really love your story with like your kids and you wanting to always be a mom and like how you found your like three little blessings and like seeing your little family unit. It's so remarkable to me that I just love watching you, and I just think you're such an amazing like role model for them, and you're just like this little fun sweet person, and you handle it like from what I see with all grace, and like seeing who they're becoming. I don't know them that well. I've just met them probably in the past few years, and but just seeing who they are is really remarkable, and you're doing it all on your own. Well, of course with your family close by, but really doing it on your own. But before we get into that, I also want to thank you because if it wasn't for you, probably this podcast would never have started.
Oh,
Because you, like a few years ago, told me I should start a show, and I thought it was like a joke, and I treated it like a joke. And then a year and a half later, here we are. So thank you so much.
well, I want to say to you, it's an honor to be here and to be on this that started out as kind of a joke, kind of something just to throw out there. And it's been so impressive to see you just jump straight into it. And
Aw.
I think that's pretty remarkable.
Thank you, love. Thank you. And I just love you to death. Just for our listeners, Maggie and I have become bonded through Jiu-Jitsu. She claims that she's taller than me, or she acts like she's way taller than me, but
Way
we're like
taller.
two inches apart. But she's so tiny. She's a spitfire out on the mats. Like you're like, oh, there's this like little cute thing, and she just comes at you, and you're like, holy shit, what's going on? So she's like, oh, I had brothers growing up, but it's I love our group, and I love our friendship. And we really have gotten through jujitsu. It's a magical place. I don't know how, like, we're there trying to kill each other, but then somehow it's so vulnerable, and the friendships that we've made in our friendship, I value it greatly.
Yeah,
So,
it's like nothing else, that's for sure.
hmm yeah, it's like I can't even, it's hard to explain, but
It
it
is
just,
hard. Yeah, and
yeah.
it definitely bonds you in a different way. It is so vulnerable and so, I don't know, you're just there touching each other and, I don't know, it's visceral. It's but it's
Yeah, and
also silly and fun and
I
yeah.
think because it takes like I feel like it takes a certain person to do jujitsu in it themselves. Like you say, like the vulnerability, like someone's literally within your like personal space. You gotta one get comfortable with someone being in your personal space, someone like sweating on you, and and then yeah, like trusting that person because you're trusting them to stop trusting yourself. And there, like you say, like there's a vulnerability about it that breaks down these barriers that kind of opens you up to like be really open with these people, right?
Totally. Totally. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it increases the bond. Yeah, it's nothing I ever imagined I'd do.
I know. Me
Rolling
neither.
around, sweating on people. Yeah, never imagined.
I was actually like with rolling with the guys I always test who I'm gonna actually I do and I don't. I always test the guys like, okay, what round are we in? I save the females to train with after like doing the guys because they're less sweaty, by
Totally. Yeah,
in the
totally.
beginning.
Who's gonna smell the best after
Hmm.
5 rounds? Yeah.
Exactly.
You always know there's certain ones that always smell better.
We there's word around like, we keep that
Yeah.
FOMO going. But
Yeah.
well, thanks for being here. And
Yeah,
so
thank
I
you.
again talking about Maggie, you have 3 kids. Do you want to like say their names and their ages?
Sure.
Okay.
So my oldest is Tigist. She is 19, and we used to say Tigist is the biggest, but now she's actually the smallest. She's
Smallest,
tiny.
literally, yeah.
And then Abby, her full name is Abakia, but we call her
Oh,
Abby.
I love
And then,
that.
yeah, yeah, I love that
Yeah,
too. She is
Abakia.
17. And then Baruch, my baby, is 14.
Who
And
he's taller than everybody. Your
oh
baby
yeah,
is
he's huge.
taller than
He's
everyone. Yeah.
almost 6 foot. Yeah, he's
Oh my
huge.
gosh. And how
So
old
we'll
is he?
see.
Sorry. He's
He's
13?
14.
14?
14. He just turned 14. So yeah, and it's kind of unique. There's a lot of things unique about our story, but one thing that's really special is that I actually adopted my son first. So I adopted, he's the youngest, but he came home first. So we did things really out of order, and kind of really roundabout ways. But yeah, so he was my first and now he's my baby.
So let's go back to that time. So you were married at the time. Yeah. And you wanted
Yes.
to have kids or you didn't want to have kids. What was that like decision?
Yeah. Well, I always knew I wanted to be a mom. Ever since I can remember. That was something that, I went to college, didn't really know what I wanted my career to be, but I knew I always wanted to be a mom. And I thought I wanted to have a lot of kids. I thought I wanted to have 4 or 5. Turns out three is pretty good. But, to be honest, adoption was never on my radar. It's just something I never really thought about. And, I guess I assumed it was for people that maybe couldn't biologically have kids. I knew one of my best friends growing up, her parents adopted kids from Russia later on in life. They were too old to have kids, but wanted to have more kids. So, it just wasn't on my radar. And the guy I was married to didn't want to have kids. And that was something that we actually almost broke up over. But he said he was open to adoption. And so I think at the time I was really young. And I think I kind of assumed, oh, he'll eventually change his mind. He'll come around. We're so young, whatever. And so kind of naively thought that. And so we ended up getting married and a couple of years passed. And it was that time we started having that conversation again. And he was still really set that he didn't want to have kids, but that he was open to adoption. And so I realized, well, if I want to be a mom, I guess I better explore this. And it was just an idea at the time. It was just kind of this foreign idea, but I started researching it. And I don't know if they still do this anymore, but back then they would do this thing called photo listing where they would put pictures of all the available kids online. So you literally would see maybe their name and age and a little picture of them. And seeing
In Ethiopia or all over like all over the world?
all over. And I think
Okay.
even they may still do that in the US with older
Okay.
kids. But yeah, it was all over. I think there was some in Russia, I think at the time is what maybe we were looking into. And I remember seeing these faces of these little kids and thinking, oh my gosh, like I could be their mom and it wouldn't be weird. There's these beautiful kids. All these kids need parents.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really struck a chord with me. And I dove headfirst into just researching it and looking into it. And at that time, there may still be now, but there was a ton of blogs of families that had adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were international, and a lot of them were families choosing to adopt over have biological kids instead of maybe versus not being able to. Um, so that was really interesting. And it was interesting to see their stories. And kind of as I
Mm-hmm.
read their stories and saw those pictures, it just made it seem more real. It seemed less of an idea than and something that I could see myself doing. And it was a long and windy road to get to Ethiopia, where I adopted all three of my kids. But we started out, I knew I wanted a closed adoption. If I were to do it again today, I might feel differently. But at that time, I was pretty certain I wanted a closed adoption, which means you have no contact with the biological parents once it's finalized, or ever, even in the process. And so it seemed to make sense then, if that's what I was wanting, to go overseas. It seemed like, that was the easiest way to do that. So we started looking into different countries, and initially we had signed up with Kazakhstan, which was just kind of random. It just seemed interesting. It's, between Asia and Russia, and the kids are really cute. Some kids look more Asian, some are more Russian looking, and it just seemed interesting. I mean, it was really just, kind of just picking one and going for it. And as we were beginning, there's a ton of paperwork that goes into it. And as we were starting the paperwork, Kazakhstan shut down to international adoption. Okay. So we had to make a decision of switching to a different country. And so we decided, just kind of randomly again, maybe we'll pick Russia. It's right there. We had known some families that had adopted from Russia, kind of without even really knowing about it. We picked it. And so we started the paperwork. And interestingly enough, the man I was married to, he traveled a lot for work, and he happened to have to go to Russia for work during that time. So I was able to go to St. Petersburg and Moscow. And to be honest, it was a cool place to see, but I did not feel a connection at all. Okay. It was kind of the opposite. It was really weird. Yeah. And later on, in contrast with,
were you just like making that based on like meeting the kids, or just in like the country itself?
Just like, in general. Yeah. We weren't even to the place. Yeah, we had just started the paperwork, so it was in the very beginning of the adoption stuff. So, and as I started to learn more about Russia, there's tons of kids that need families, but unfortunately, just the culture and just how things are, a lot of the kids aren't really, in a lot of instances, I won't say all the time, but the conditions they live in are pretty bad. And they're bad in Ethiopia too, but in a different way. They're kind of known for leaving babies in cribs and not getting that physical touch. A lot of the babies don't learn to crawl.
In Russia or in Ethiopia?
In Russia.
Okay.
Yeah, in Russia. And kind of learning more about that, and combined with my own experience of going there and just kind of not really feeling that connection with the country. I started to question whether that was the right choice, and we actually got matched. So when you start the process, you put down if you want a boy or a girl, what age. They ask you a million questions in terms of what health conditions you're willing to take on. Like, would you adopt a baby that's deaf or blind or missing a limb, or just, it's an endless list. And it's really hard to go through and kind of make that decision, But one thing in Russia is that it's common for a lot of babies to be born with fetal alcohol syndrome, which is visible. Like, usually you can kind of visibly detect it, but they would never tell you that because it's harder to diagnose. And I can't remember if it's because they have to wait till the kids are older to really know, or if it's just a harder thing to know for sure. But along with that comes a lot of behavioral issues. And it's kind of a scary thing, if you don't know, a new parent, you don't know a lot about it. So we got matched with a little boy.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. Are you like, at this time, are you like, I'm just looking for one child? Or are you looking for more than one child at this point?
No, just one. Okay. Yeah, and a baby. Okay. I think we put between.
Oh, and you wanted a baby. Okay, so you were looking for a baby.
Yeah, we said 0 to 2, and usually it's not going to be a newborn. The baby would probably be like 6 to 9 months or older. Okay. And so we got matched with a little boy, but it was pretty apparent from the pictures that he probably had fetal alcohol syndrome.
From Russia? You got paired
from Russia.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was a really hard decision, but it just felt pretty clear to me that this wasn't the right choice for us, at least not at that point in time. And it was a weird thing because it's like, well, I don't know, here's a kid that needs a family, what's going to happen to him? And it's, that was a hard decision, but I just, honestly, I knew so clearly that he wasn't our baby. And so we
Right.
walked away from that. And
And are
then,
you and your husband, ex-husband, on the same page with this? Are you guys like,
yeah, yeah, we were
okay,
on the same page. He kind of
uh-huh,
let me take the lead. He
okay.
had less of a preference and was just kind of like, let me take over, do the research. And he was kind of supportive of whatever, but
Can I ask one question too? What was it that he was okay with adopting? And again, you don't have to answer this because it's from his perspective, but what had him be okay with adopting a baby but not having a baby himself?
yeah, he had just always said he thought the world was a harsh place,
Okay.
and
Uh-huh.
he couldn't imagine bringing more kids into it, and especially knowing there were a lot of kids that needed families already.
Yeah.
So that was
That's
kind of the
cool.
extent of it. It
Yeah.
never, yeah, got beyond if there was anything deeper than that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what he told
Okay.
me. So
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so sorry. So there was the baby from
Yeah,
Russia.
so we made that decision to say no, to turn him down. And then shortly after that, we did a webinar with the adoption agency we were using, and they were going through all the countries um, that they facilitated adoptions with. And they said, we have this new country that just opened up to international adoption, and it was Ethiopia. And I remember it was like a slideshow we were watching on the computer, and there was the most beautiful baby I've ever seen in my life, was like the picture they were using. And I was like, what? Like, where is this country? I need to know more. Like, as they were talking about it, I just felt this instant draw.
Oh.
And so I started looking into it, and again found a bunch of blogs of families that had adopted from Ethiopia. I read a really good book written by a woman that had gone there, and she just as I was reading it and reading their stories and hearing what it was like, I was just, in my heart, it just felt like that's where we're supposed to go.
Oh.
So long story short, we switched then over to, and they were also saying, it usually happens pretty quick because it is a newer country, and there's back then, which was 2007, 2008, there were 6 million orphans just in
Ooh.
Ethiopia alone. So
Mm.
there's an extreme need. It's pretty crazy, pretty heartbreaking, and
Wait,
the number
six
one cause,
6 million?
6 million
Is that
orphans.
just like lack of birth control or
Well, it's just a result of poverty, really. It's a
yeah,
lot of the parents dying. It's, not having enough money.
right.
Yeah, yeah, all of it, all of
Oh
it.
wow. Okay.
So yeah, it just kind of felt like all of a sudden when I heard about this country and started reading more about it, it felt like that's where we were supposed to go. And
Hmm.
so we made the switch. We had to redo a bunch of paperwork, and then 9 months later, we were matched with my son Baruch.
Wow. So how long was the process to date from like when you had started and then you like went through Russia to when you got paired with Brooke?
Maybe like a
Oh
year and
wow,
a
okay.
half at the most. But yeah, I mean, there were probably a few months where we were just tossing around the idea and kind of just loosely talking about it till when we actually like picked an adoption agency. And
Right.
so yeah, I
It's
would say it
really
wasn't
quick.
long. It was
That's
quick.
really
Yeah,
quick.
it was
So
quick.
and then so you got paired with Baruch, and was Baruch born at that time or he
Yeah, so when we got matched with him, it was in November. So he was probably like, I think he was 9 months old
okay.
ish, 9, 10 months old. And then his birthday's in January. So he turned a year, and then we went to get him in March. So he was like, 13, 14 months old.
So and at that point you hadn't been to the country like you had when you went to go visit Russia, right? So when you went and got Baruch, that was your first time there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that was so surreal. And we had
What
gone
was that experience like?
It was incredible. I think we landed, it was nighttime. So we landed and we were going to go get him the next day. And they took us to a guest house. We stayed, there's these really nice little guest houses, and it was for these families that were adopting. So it was, all the other guests were families that were adopting as well. And it's set up kind of like you have a common eating area, and everyone would have dinner together and breakfast, and then you have your separate rooms and bathrooms. It was really, really nice. And it was all gated. We pulled up and it's gated. And I always tell the kids, it's so strange the way they do things. It's like barbed wire, but also like glass. I guess it's probably like that in Mexico too, where they have the broken glass up on the wall so people won't come over the
Oh,
wall and break in. And there's always a guard at the gate. Um, but we
and this
got
is
into
for
our
all the
room.
families. This is for all the families that are coming to adopt kids
Yeah,
that
and I
come and
mean, there was
stay.
probably maybe like four families there. Yeah,
Okay. Uh
four,
huh.
five families. So I couldn't sleep that night. I was just so
Of
excited,
course.
and anyway, and plus with the time change and everything else, and so we got up early the next morning. And so Baruch was born in Awassa, which is southern Ethiopia, and we were in the capital, Addis Ababa, which is north. So they had brought him up from Awassa about a week or two before we came, and he was in this like transition home. And so we were going to meet him and, take him back with us. And so we're sitting in the waiting room with a bunch of other families, and we're waiting and waiting, and they bring in all the kids, and there's some toddlers and little kids, and all the other families are meeting their babies, and we're kind of sitting there, and there's like no Baruch. And so we keep waiting and waiting. We're like, okay, when is he going to come out? And so we got it. Oh, we had come early too. We had gotten special permission to come a week early.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and talked to the director, and I said, oh, are they going to bring Baruch out soon? And he's like, oh. And he looked at his paperwork and he's like, oh, you're early. And I'm like, yeah, but they were supposed to tell you. They said it was fine. And it was kind of a big deal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't know if I was going to be able to get him that day. In the moment, it was super stressful. And so they said, okay, well, let us figure some stuff out and then we'll get back to you. So anyway, we had to wait a couple extra hours. Yeah, and it was torture. And then we finally were able to get him. So
They just like rallied him. They're like,
he
oh,
was
okay, we're
there,
not
but
ready for him.
I think they had to make sure all the paperwork was in line, and
Okay.
whatever. I don't really even know why it took so long, but yeah, because maybe they had to bring him from somewhere else that was close by. I can't remember. But yeah, so that was like an added little bump in the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty special. And so they let us back. He was in a crib, and they had given him a little cookie, and he was just sitting there super content eating a cookie, had cookies all over his cheeks. And so we picked him up, and he kind of looked at us, and I was holding him, and he just started crying. He burst into tears. Yeah, it was so sad. It was probably so scary for him.
Because so he's
Um,
13 months at that
yeah,
point. So I
13.
don't know because I don't. Are they? Is he walking or talking at that
He
point?
he was just starting to learn to walk. Actually,
Okay.
he took his first steps with us in the guest house
Okay.
before he went home. So
Oh
yeah, he was just
wow.
in that
And do
stage.
they know? Like I know too because they don't keep birth certificates in Ethiopia. So is he really that? Like, do they really know, or is it like give or
With
take?
Yeah, with Farouk, it's pretty, I mean, it might be a couple weeks off, but because he
Okay.
was so young, it's easier to know, like, about the time he was born. With the girls, it's a little different
Uh
because they
huh.
were older.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I think with him, he might be a couple weeks off, but that's it, you
And did
know.
they tell you a birth date, or did you just make up
Yeah,
a
they
birthday?
they
Okay.
made one up, so it's
Okay.
really random. Yeah.
I love that. So you see this little being and he starts crying and then how long do you stay in Ethiopia for till you come home?
I think it was 2 weeks. And actually, the really cool thing is my parents were able to come out. They came out.
Mhm.
We were there for a week by ourselves with him at the guest house, and then my parents came, and that was so special. It was really, really special to have them there and have them experience that, because
Yeah.
it's hard to convey to someone. I mean, there's something you go through when you go to that country and you're there, and they got to go to the orphanages with us, and it's hard to share that fully unless you've been there and experienced it. So that
Yeah.
was really special. And I guess to back up, so while I was waiting to travel to Ethiopia to pick up Baruch, I just got super into wanting to do as much as I could to help these kids in Ethiopia. It was like my heart had just, burst open and I wanted to do something. And so there was an organization that had just started, and they were sponsoring kids at the government orphanage in Addis Ababa. And so what it would be was they would match you with a kid, and you would send money every month, and that would be enough to help with their school and
Oh.
food and just basic stuff. And you'd also write letters back and forth and send pictures. So right before we left for Ethiopia, they sent me a picture, and it was of my oldest, Tigist.
Oh, get out of here. So you were
Yeah.
sponsoring her.
Yeah, so I was
And then
sponsoring
did you
her.
see her when you were there?
So yeah, so when my parents came out, that was one of the things I wanted to do was go visit Tigist.
Okay.
And so we had brought a bunch of donations, and we stopped at the orphanage where she was at. And I remember I asking again, it was kind of one of those things like when we went to get Baruch, it was like, oh, is Tigist here? And they're like, they looked at each other and I showed the picture and they're like, I don't know if she's still here anymore. And I'm like, what? And so
Yeah.
finally, someone found her and brought her up. And I remember she came over and she was so darling. She came up and she was kind of scared, but trying to be sweet, you know.
Did she
And
know who you were? Like
no, not
now,
really.
like that
Yeah,
you're like sending money or anything
I
like?
don't
And
think so.
how old is she at that time?
I think she was probably
Okay.
7-ish.
Okay.
And so we took pictures with her and kind of talked to her, you know, with a translator. And we got back in the car after that, and my mom turned to me and she's like, I think Baruch needs a sister. And I was like, Mom, don't say
Oh.
that. But it wasn't soon after we got home that I kind of started working on that to see
Yeah,
if
so
she was
you have a newborn at home pretty much, and or like and also like a baby for you, like
right. Yeah, I felt like
acclimating.
having, yeah, exactly. Acclimating to
Like
just
how do you
being a parent.
prepare like I mean I guess like any parent is I always hear it's kind of instinctual that you know what to get and
Yeah,
like
it really was. It's kind of crazy to think about, especially because, you know, my kids didn't come from me, but that
mhm.
instinct was still there.
Oh, I
And
love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, it's a lot, sometimes it's trial and error, but I feel like, you know, and I didn't always get it perfect, but I feel like, yeah, it was just an instinct. And with Baruch in particular, and I don't know how, if this is how most moms feel after they give birth, but it was like for me, like falling in love. Like I didn't care if I ate, I didn't need to sleep. All I wanted to do was take care of him. And
Oh.
it like kind of gave me this extra energy where I could, you know, if I didn't sleep or whatever, it didn't matter because I was just wanted to take care of this little baby.
Oh, I
So
love
anyway,
that.
yeah, yeah. And again, it was, you know, trial and error. You kind of figure out what works, but he was older. I mean, and he was eating real food. And so there were a lot of things we didn't have to deal with like you would with a newborn, I guess, but he was sleeping and whatever. So
And when he like I mean obviously then because he wasn't speaking like when you said you like spoke to Tigis you had a translator there so he's like learning English again I guess as his first language then.
yeah, he knew some baby words. Actually, Baruch was super verbal. And he knew, he would have his baby Ethiopian words that we would say to him. And then he picked up English right. I mean, he's still extremely chatty if you know him now, but yeah, he started talking right instantly. Like he was
Uh-huh.
picking up words really quick. So, and
Okay.
he would, at the time, he would have this scream like when he wanted something. And I remember thinking, oh man, I got to hurry up and teach this kid how to talk. So I don't have to scream every time he wants something. But
So what were some of like the fun things that you would be like you said you just got energy so what were some of the fun things that you and Baruch would do when he was a baby?
so I was lucky enough to be able to stay home with him. I didn't have to go to work. And it was also really fortunate that a bunch of my friends were having kids that were all his age. So
Mm.
we would go meet up at parks with my friends and he would play with their kids. We lived pretty close to the beach and I'd put him in his bob stroller and we would walk with the dogs on the beach. And, you know, he loved playing in the sand. He loved going to coffee shops with me, which is still something I love to
Yeah.
do.
It carries on.
Yeah, it was just, I kind of just decided, you know, the things that I love, like, you know, see if, and then we'll go from there as he develops the things he likes to do. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, we would do our walks and play dates and he loved to read. We would read a ton and yeah, it was pretty cool. It was definitely a different time, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And was your husband, ex-husband, like bonding with him as well?
yeah. Like I said earlier, he had a job where he traveled a lot, so he was gone fairly often, and he would be gone for weeks or months at a time.
Oh wow.
And so yeah, there was a lot of time where it was just Baruch and I. But yeah, he did, you know, the guy I was married to was really into music, and Baruch still is to this day. And he would mess around on the
Oh, that's
guitar with
cool.
Baruch and stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
That's cool. Pass
yeah,
that on.
yeah,
Um, so then you said so shortly after you started getting the itch for having a baby number two.
yeah. A big baby,
A
big,
big baby,
big,
yeah.
big 7-year-old. Yeah, I couldn't shake it after I met Tigist, and even in the first picture they sent me of her, she's a beautiful girl, but her eyes were so sad, and it just broke my heart. And for the kids that are at the government orphanage, some of them get adopted, but most of them end up just kind of going through the system and then being sent out on their own when they're 16, 17, 18 years old. And it's harder too for older kids to get adopted. And
Hmm.
I couldn't shake her. I couldn't think about her having to be there. And anyway, I started working. So I started
So you
talking
were
to my
specifically wanting her.
her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted more kids eventually, but I don't think I would have jumped into it as quickly.
Now
Um,
is it more challenging to do it at that level versus at the level that you did? Because you said they were government versus like the
it
agency you
ended
went
up
through.
being a lot more challenging. Yeah. And so
Okay.
her process took 2 years, which is
Oh
crazy
wow.
because you would think, she wasn't going to be getting out of the orphanage. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like, there was any chance of that, but there was a lot of red tape. They don't keep records the same way we do. So I probably had 3 court dates with her, and it took three tries to finally
Wait, so
pass.
you were having to go back to Ethiopia back and forth 3 different times?
I did actually. I didn't have to, but
Okay.
it's kind of one of those things that sometimes you feel like you get things done better
More
if you're
done,
there in
yeah.
person. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, one time I traveled there. So one really beautiful thing that's kind of come from really Baruch's adoption is I've probably had 6 or 7 friends I know end up adopting kids, like close friends. And one of my best friends, Maria, she shortly after Baruch came home, like I think seeing him and seeing our experience just really opened her eyes to the need. And she had one daughter already, but she decided to start adopting from Rwanda, which is close to Ethiopia. So anyway, on one of the court dates we had for Tigist, she so happened to be in Rwanda picking up her kids. So
Mm-hmm.
she had to go through Ethiopia to get her visa, and we were able to meet up together
Mm-hmm.
and be in Ethiopia together. So it was really special. But during one of the court dates, they told me, it doesn't look like Tigist is going to be able to be adopted. It's just not going
That's
to work out.
crazy.
And
Wow.
so the adoption agency we were with said, this is all we can do, but you're all approved. You can adopt. There's tons of other, 7, 8-year-old little girls. If you want to switch over and adopt one of them, you can. Um,
Wait,
and it was
Sev,
like,
you can adopt from the agency you had previously
yeah,
adopted from?
yeah.
That's
And,
crazy.
adopt. And,
Yeah.
but they said, with Tigist, it's kind of a done deal. Like it doesn't look like we're going to be able to pass court. And they told me it was the day we were supposed to leave to go back home to the US. And I remember just breaking down crying and being like, there's got to be something else. That's not good enough for me. Like,
Aw, of
I'm not gonna
course.
stop
That's
there.
so you. It's this like so quiet, but that's so you. Like, I'm gonna keep it going. I love that.
So yeah, I can be kind of stubborn if I want to be. So
Uh-huh.
um anyway,
Especially
our
with
drive.
Mama Bear. Mama Bear,
Well, and
you're
that's
like,
it. There's something that switches when you become a mom, and it's like I'll do
mm-hmm,
anything for those kids. And
mm-hmm,
um yeah, so our driver, who was Ethiopian, he said he saw me crying and stuff. He's like, wait, I know someone that works at another adoption agency. Let me call him and see what he thinks. He was an Ethiopian guy. So he calls him up, and the guy said, yeah, I want to help her. Give me her number. Tell her when she gets back to America to call me, and we'll try to figure this out. So we
cool.
did, and they ended up being able to
Wow,
get the right
really?
paperwork. Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, to me
Yeah.
though, like all the things like you say, like going back, we were talking about manifestation yesterday, and we're like something had happened where like something I was thinking of something and it like popped up and I didn't even do anything, and we're like, well, that's how manifestation happens. But to me, that's like a pure manifestation. Like you knew what you wanted And I mean, out of everything, the taxi driver, like, was like, oh, I
Yeah,
know someone. Like, it just,
yeah.
it's like, it, yeah, that's crazy.
It was
I
crazy.
love
And really
that.
the adoptions of the
It's
kids
like
have been
so
quite
meant to be, right?
that's
Like, you
exactly
knew,
it.
like, she's your
Mhm.
daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, and just believing that. I mean, that whole process with all three kids was probably the most spiritual experience I've ever had in my life. And
Hmm.
a lot of it, it's easy to talk about it now, but at the time, waiting 2 years to bring Tigist home was so hard. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, to know, she's so far away and I don't know if she's being taken care of.
Hmm.
I remember they had sent me pictures. She had busted open her eye on like some rusty old play equipment.
Because you're still
Um,
sponsoring her at this point, right? You're
yeah,
still
and
sponsoring
I
her.
had met some of the people in the orphanage, or like other families would go visit and take stuff to her for
Hmm.
us. And
Oh,
yeah, so that was really cool.
did she really get it? Did they really give
Kind
her?
of, and not
Oh,
really, not till I think
oh,
they're really careful not to tell the kids to, because they don't want the kids to get
get their hopes
disappointed.
up.
So not until usually you pass court will they tell them, this family's adopting you. So, um, but
Because
yeah,
so she's 9 by the she's 9 by the time you actually get her.
right. So she was 9. It was a week off from the birthday they gave her to turn 9. And, I think part of the purpose in it taking 2 years is that along the way and all the trips to Ethiopia was that I got to meet Abby. And so Abby was
That
one
gave
of
me the
the,
chills. That literally
it
just
was pretty
gave me the chills.
special.
Because I'm also thinking you're also raising like a 13, 15, or like, I don't, you guys, your mom's talking months, but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
like
Year
raising
and a
a
half year old.
1-year-old and 3-year-old. So
Yeah.
you're trying to be that for Baruch, but then also
Right.
you're like going through your own like challenges of, you know, trying to get Tigis.
Yeah, and I actually remember one day, and it must have been when Baruch was a little older, probably closer to 2. We were driving to Trader Joe's, and I remember just crying in the car over, not being sure what's going to happen with Tigist. And I remember Baruch like comforting me and like, "It's okay, Mom, we'll bring home Tigist," and
Oh, he knew.
he was just, yeah, and he was just such a verbal kid, yeah. But
It's cute. So then you're saying through your journey with Tigis, you met Abby.
yeah, so on one of the trips, there was just a group of probably like 5 or 6 little girls all around the same age, and they would always hang out together, and they were, hang out with Tigist and come and say hi to us. And I remember one day,
Is she in the government agency or in the
yeah,
other agency?
yeah, she
Okay.
was in the government, and she was, one of Tigist's best friends, and they would share a bed. And actually, I had gotten a picture of Tigist. Someone sent it to me, and it had what I thought was a little boy next to her. And I remember saying, "Oh, that's the most beautiful little boy I've ever seen." It turns out it was Abby, but they had cut her hair. But then I
Oh.
got to see her in person. And I remember she passed by me, and if you know Abby, she has just like the sparkliest eyes. And she gave me a little smile and kind of like a little twinkle in her eye. And she looked a little mischievous. And I remember thinking, oh, I wonder if that little girl is available for adoption.
You're like, I'll take
And
you, I'll take you, I'll take you.
we asked, we realized the bond that Tigist had with her friends.
Hmm.
And, with older kid adoptions, I think it can be a hard transition for those kids. Even though they don't have much, it's all they've ever known. And, to take them to a place where nothing looks like home,
Hmm.
it seemed important that, maybe we started talking about it, and it felt like, well, maybe we should see if one of her friends is available too. And so we become good friends with some of the volunteers at the orphanage. And I remember talking to one of the guys, he was Ethiopian, and just kind of mentioning it, like, are any of her friends available? And he's like, oh yeah, Abigia is. And I said, which one was she? And he's like, I'll show you tomorrow. And I remember that night being like, I hope it's the little girl. I called her the little Rasta girl because her hair was all dreadlocked out. Like, I
Uh-huh.
hope it's the little Rasta girl. And it
Uh-huh.
was.
But I thought they shaved, I think you said they cut her hair.
This was like later on. The
Okay,
picture
okay.
I'd gotten was like from, a couple months to a
Okay.
year earlier.
Okay.
So yeah.
Oh. So did
So,
that process, were you able to go, so were so at that point did you know you were adopting Tigis when you were like, I met Abby
Yeah.
too, or okay.
Yeah. We had probably already failed like two court dates at that point. And I think we were with the new agency and we had gone over there. And so the new agency we were with doesn't normally allow for two unrelated siblings to be adopted
I was
at
gonna
once.
say, did you take them at the same time? Like, were you
I
then now you're like,
did.
I'm going and doing this one, and now I'm like, I'm gonna go and do two at one time?
Yeah. And
Wow.
the adoption agency, that's not something they allow for, but I wrote him a long letter and pleaded my
Maggie
case.
fashion.
So they made an exception. And so actually getting approval for Abby happened faster than Tigges, but we were able to, it was close enough to where I went, and then again, actually the final thing was, so after we passed court for both the girls, you have to get approved by the embassy to get a visa to come home. And that's not hard, but it was right around the rainy season. And in the rainy season in Ethiopia, they shut everything down.
Oh shoot.
And so I hadn't heard from the embassy. And I'm like, forget this. I booked a plane ticket and I was going to go sit in the embassy office until they gave me the visas. And so that's what I ended up doing.
Wait, the girls needed the visa to be
Yeah.
able to come home? Okay.
Yeah. And so I just, without knowing if I was going to get
Jeez.
approval, I just decided to fly over there. And because if we had waited, it would be like the matter of like 3 months. So it was, they shut down for 3 months. So it was like, I don't want to
Oh
wait 3 months
jeez.
to do that. Yeah. Before we waited this
So you
long.
have this adoption date that they're like, here you have to come on this date, and then you.
Usually, yeah, so usually you pass court and then they submit all the documents to the embassy and then the embassy reviews it and then approves it and then you're all set to come and fly and everything. And so I came early and my plan was to go sit in the embassy office and be there in person again to be like, can you please approve me?
Yeah. Well, that's cool though, because I
So
mean, either way, like if oh, but you couldn't, because I was gonna say, because even if you had to be there for 3 months, you'd be with the girls, no, right?
well, yeah, but I wouldn't be able to, I didn't take Farouk on that trip and I don't think I could have, that was torture. I was gone for a week and that was torture to be away from
Oh, because you
him.
were away from Baruch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
Okay.
really
So
fun.
you went back, and then you sat in the embassy, and I guess it worked out because you
Yeah, and
were.
and then that was pretty easy. Yeah, they approved it right away and it was easy. So
Wow. So you got both girls. So now you were gone for 1 week, you said? So like you get the girls, and then are you in that same little home again?
yeah, it was a different one, but the same kind of setup and everything. And we had become friends with some of the other families there. Yeah, and we would just hang out. You can't do a whole lot. They don't recommend, especially with the kids and everything so new. And so we kind of just would hang out at the
Well, what
guest
I'm
house.
thinking though too, they don't speak English,
No,
right?
they speak English.
Yeah, so like I'm assuming at that point you're having a translator, like you
Yeah,
say,
and the people at the guest
right?
house, a lot of them, yeah, the drivers were really good about speaking English. But yeah, and luckily the girls both picked it up pretty quick. I mean, she would tell me things just saying the words, and then this one, and then she'd point to stuff, and then this one, and then this one. She would tell me
So
a whole
they
story. Yeah, we were able
Because
to.
so she's 7 at that time. So
Yeah,
Tigis was 9, and
yeah,
then Abby was 7 by
yeah,
then.
yeah.
Okay, and so that's fascinating that that's crazy. Like she knew what it like by pointing what it would
Oh
be in
yeah,
English or something, or what
yeah.
it
She just
translated.
tried to tell me things by pointing to it and acting it out, and
So
um,
magical.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so then you get them home and they meet, and so now you're out of the territory, and yeah, like you say, like they speak their language, you speak their language, you have a baby, or he's 2 now,
Yeah,
and
I
you
think he
got these
was
two.
almost, I think he was 2.5. Yeah, I think. Or maybe he was 3, actually. I can't remember. It was 2011 when we came
Yeah,
home.
he must have been 3, because he was, if he was 13 months and then 2 years, right, it would have been 3.
Yeah,
Look at me.
yeah. Look at you. Good
Look at
math skills.
me. um so now you have to blend them all together. I mean, I guess Tigis and Abby were friends, but now you have to blend
Yeah,
the three. And
yeah.
how is that?
We kind of just did it. I don't know. Looking back, it's like I don't even know how it just happened. I think one thing that was really helpful was that, Baruch was super verbal, but he was also speaking kind of baby talk, like little kid talk, which was really
Uh,
simple. And I think that helped the girls pick things up quick because of him. He was so chatty and talking, but it was just these simple phrases and words. And I think that made it easy. I put them in school right away, actually. And so
cool.
they were within weeks, I mean, days, weeks, they were speaking enough to get by, and it just kind of kept going at a super fast rate. But there were a
Right.
lot of firsts. So up until that point, the girls, for instance, had never brushed their teeth. So like
Oh,
there was
wow.
like a lot of things like that they had to learn, which
Or
is
were there teeth? Were there like you said with Russia, you were dealing like it was like different issues that you were having to deal with. Like how were their teeth good?
oh yeah, no cavities. They were beautiful,
Wow.
straight.
Wow.
Neither of them will need braces. They're straight. They had no cavities. Yeah, it was pretty incredible actually. Um, so yeah, just all of those first that you kind of take for granted, especially when you have a baby and then a toddler and you're just kind of learning things as you go. But then all of a sudden you
Mm-hmm.
have kids that don't know how to do any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So older kids. So
I love that. And then so they went right into school and then like just blending together, it just like
yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
you
it
just
wasn't
figured it out.
perfect. I don't want
Yeah.
to, it wasn't without its struggles. It was, school was challenging, especially for Tigis being a little older. She was behind already in math just because of the education she was getting in Ethiopia, and then to have to learn English, so there was a
Yeah.
lot of things that were challenging, but not unbearable at the same time.
How were
Yeah.
kids like how were the kids like, they're moving to Encinitas, California, and like how was that for them? Um,
Yeah.
coming.
I mean, I think, well, like things like Ethiopia is a very modest country. And so, like, even going to the beach and wearing a one piece, they were, super like not wanting to take off their clothes and wear their bathing suits at the beach. There's things they had to kind of get over, cultural things like that. But I mean, especially when they first started school, they were the little superstars. Like all the other little girls wanted to be their friends. They were like
Oh,
super
cool.
novel. Yeah. So
That's
that,
awesome.
yeah. Yeah.
I
And I
love
think they
that
were
because
really good.
I just think because if they weren't really even speaking the language though, too, like I guess.
Yeah, it just kind of worked. I mean, I think they were at those ages where they were first and third grade where, kids just thought that was cool and kind of just embraced them. They had really great teachers. We really lucked out. That it was just such a warm and nurturing environment for them to get into. So yeah, there were things, Tigist had a hard time. She had a lot of grief, missing Ethiopia and missing her other
Hmm.
friends. And, that was really hard. I was really fortunate. One of my best friends was Ethiopian, and she would be able to come over and translate for me and kind of help work through some of those harder things,
Mm, that's
just so I
beautiful.
can know what's going on. And, it wasn't, perfect or whatever, but it was all manageable. We
Hmm.
managed it and kind of just took each thing as it came and worked through it.
And I know like I met you through jiu-jitsu and then I we started realizing all the connections that we
Yeah.
had through like because we have several other friends that have adopted from Ethiopia as well, which Encinitas is a small town that you actually like are friends with the same people and actually Baruch and Stephanie and
Brad.
Brad, they go surfing
Yeah, yeah,
every
every
time.
weekend.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's
which
pretty
is super cute.
special.
And
Yeah,
then Dawn does Brooke's hair,
yeah,
and she's
yeah,
got two from
yeah.
there too. So I love that you guys also have like a little community in that
Yeah.
in itself too with that.
Yeah, and that was pretty important. The girls had a friend too. She moved away kind of more recently, but that they would see often, a couple girls their age. And so that was really good to have those connections. It has changed a little as they've gotten older, but especially when they were, really new and kind of adjusting, it was good to have and also good for me to have parents that had gone through it too. So, it is different than having a baby biologically. And so it was good to have other parents that we could talk about things together.
is are they like, so now how are their relationships now? Because I think it's really cute to see, like, do they act like siblings? Are they, do they like each other? How do they act now?
They definitely have their moments where they don't get along for sure, but all three of them have a really special relationship, especially the girls are, it's like they're best friends and
Mm-hmm.
sisters, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is a really special relationship. And, they still share a room. And I
Oh,
think,
that's cute.
maybe our circumstances in general of our family have kind of bonded us all together in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
We went through some, which I don't know if we'll get to, but some kind of more traumatic stuff when my husband left. And I think just the four of us have bonded together probably in a way that's
Yeah.
unique. But they definitely have their moments. And one thing that bonds them all together is music. They're all super musically inclined, especially my oldest and my youngest. And they're always singing at the dinner table, singing while they do their chores.
I
Like
know.
yeah, and that's super cool that they have that they
I
can
know.
play.
And so how old were they? So you and your husband divorced. How long had you had them by that
We
point?
had had the girls not quite a year yet, so it was like
Oh wow. So
coming up on
you
a year.
basically, and when he left, he completely left.
Yeah,
Um
so he was no longer in the picture,
yeah. And
and so
like Maggie said, we can't talk about for legal reasons, but it was a traumatic event for them. But as every traumatic event, it does probably bring you a lot closer. And that's like what I see like with you guys. I'm like, oh my God, they're like just the cutest little family unit. And when she says they're like, so we had this Christmas there was a raffle for some Christmas decorations. and and did they win that raffle,
yeah,
or
I
did
think it was
they
like a
win?
three-way tie, whoever
Yeah.
participated.
Yeah. But they just busted out. I thought it was, again, I thought that was a joke. And then the next day I think Maggie sent on our text thread their little melody, Christmas melody that they busted out, and it was like totally acoustic, and they were so good. I love them, and they're just so
Awesome.
happy. And I do like their little personality. Actually, they're not little. Their personalities, and just seeing how you bond with them. Because like you actually, like, physically you look like you could be their sibling too. Because you're so
Well, thank you.
tiny, you know? And so it's like cute just seeing, like, we go to hip hop dance class and the girls go to hip hop, and it's Abby, right? She just like
Oh
busts
yeah.
out, right?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So I love seeing them, and it is really amazing. And you've done a phenomenal job.
Oh, well, thank
Way
you.
to
It's easy.
go, Chica.
Well, it's easy when you have amazing kids. So I definitely hit the
Yes.
jackpot with them.
And I mean, like you said, you were raising pretty much three kids by yourself, but you also are very close with your parents and your siblings, right? So they're very active in their lives
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. And we actually lived with my parents for 3 months, and then we've lived close by with them, and that's been great. I mean, Baruch is best friends with my dad, and it's actually really sweet. They even like the joke now is like every Christmas, my mom buys them the same like flannel or
Oh,
shirt,
geez.
and Baruch loves twinning with them. I keep thinking he's going to get too old for that, but he loves it.
It's
So,
so funny.
yeah, I've been so blessed to have the support of my family. And, they would take the kids on little mini vacations or take them overnight, which was really helpful, just so I could get a little bit of a break. And I've been able to work for the family business, and
Yeah,
that
and you
allowed.
had to navigate going back to work too, right?
Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
a big thing. And yeah, I hadn't worked in years, and I ended up going back to teaching. I used to teach high school English, and
Hmm.
I did that
Oh,
for about a semester, a year. I went back, but unfortunately, it's hard to make ends meet on one teaching income and having three kids and living in Encinitas. And so I remember that was, sitting in my bed one night and kind of doing the math, figuring out, how much I need to make the monthly mortgage or the monthly rent. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to cut it on this salary. I'm like, I need
oh,
to do something else. And my dad had always said, if you want to come work for me, just let me know. And so that night I texted him and I said, well, is that offer still open? And so I jumped in, and that's been the best move I've ever made. It's been phenomenal. So, but yeah, it allows me to be able to go pick them up from school and, be around in the late afternoons with them and
Mm-hmm.
have dinner together. And so I feel really fortunate that I can do that.
And you do get like mom of the word, like, because also I feel like you're such a great, because Baruch, you actually, did you start jujitsu because Baruch was doing jujitsu?
Yeah, I
And
grew
then
up.
now he doesn't do
No, he
it.
doesn't do it. Well, yeah, now he's super into surfing, and I'm like, you want me
Yeah.
to start surfing again with you? He's like, okay.
But I think it's awesome because it's like such a really awesome role model, and like I see because there's nights when I'm like Maggie, like we have our date night for jujitsu, and I'm like Maggie, I'm not coming to class because I'm too tired, and you just religiously go, and I'm like, I mean, I know now they're older, so they like can like fend for themselves and take care of themselves, but like you like cook dinner, you like you go do your stuff, like you have your routine, and I'm so admirable and
Oh,
admire of it, and it just like
well, thank you.
Stephism, is that a Stephism?
Yeah, I'll have to have Blair write that one down. Well, yeah, it's like a
Yes.
well-oiled machine. We definitely have our rhythm, and we try to keep things in that routine because if one little piece gets out of line, then everything kind of
Yeah,
spins
it's
out.
not
So,
easy. I'd love to
yeah.
end on one thing. What are some of your favorite family traditions that you guys have created?
Oh, well, what I love, and I'm so grateful, even though my kids are older now, they still love is, we do little things around the holidays, like even like on St. Patrick's Day or Valentine's Day, I'll leave them little goodies by where they eat every morning. So they wake up on those holidays and they
Mm-hmm.
have their little goodies. And they're just so into that. All three of them are really great gift givers, and they love to write
Mm-hmm.
little notes and leave things like that. And so that's been something that, is super fun. And kind of more recently, in the last couple of years, we started taking trips together, just the four of us. And that's been just so awesome. Most of the time, it's road trips, and um, it's just such a special time to bond together. And we go on our hikes, or what we went to New York one of our trips, and it was just so special just to be the four of us,
Yeah,
and kind of had
that's
that
cool.
experience, that adventure together.
Making those
And
memories.
yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it centers around usually them performing for me. I'm not, they have all those gifts. I don't. So I'll just sit back and watch. But they love to perform. So they dance and sing. And yeah, that's another fun thing we like to do together.
I love that. And you guys, you and Baruch still go get coffee together?
Yeah, not so much anymore. He's like
No.
getting to that age, but the girls will. They'll still go
Yeah.
with me.
And doesn't Tigis work at a coffee shop?
Abby, yeah,
Abby
I
works at
got
a
her
coffee
a
shop.
little summer
Yeah.
job. So I could see her.
Put her
She's
to
little.
work. But
Yeah.
one tradition that I'll say that I love that you guys do is that you go get Ethiopian food in San Diego. Is it like weekly? You go down on Sunday
Well, it
nights?
used
Is
to
that your
be
thing? Okay.
when the girls first came home, it was probably weekly.
Uh-huh.
Now it's been spread out more, but actually we're going to go Monday. So yeah, we try to go as often as we can. We have one spot we really love, and yeah, that's definitely a fun tradition we have.
Aw. I love that. I love you. I so admire you. Thank you for who you are because you're just a beautiful person inside and out. And I'm so glad to call you my friend.
Well, thank
Thanks
you.
for doing
It's
this.
such an honor to be on this.
You did
Yeah.
so good. I couldn't even tell you were nervous. You were so good. You're a natural.